Russia suddenly blows up a U.S. nuclear submarine in the Norwegian Sea, sending shockwaves around the world. But right after that, a series of strange and dramatic events unfolds. The U.S. Navy reacts in an unusual way. What is really happening beneath the icy, frigid depths? The USS Tennessee, one of the most advanced nuclear submarines in the U.S. arsenal, can dive to depths of over 400 meters, move silently like a ghost through the ocean, and carry enough missiles to wipe out an entire continent. To many, it is the untouchable symbol of American military might. But all that confidence shattered in the early hours of August 5th, 2025. If you're passionate about the military, strategy, and intense what-if scenarios like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of the exciting content coming up. From the cold, dark depths of the Norwegian Sea, a sudden strike, terrifyingly precise, slammed into the vessel. In an instant, the submarine carrying dozens of nuclear warheads was thrust into a life-or-death situation. Notably, just one day earlier, President Donald Trump had ordered the deployment of 2 nuclear submarines to waters near Russia as a show of deterrence. But Moscow's response was more than just a warning. It was a direct blow to America's pride. At a depth far beyond the reach of any satellite, the USS New Mexico, a Virginia-class escort submarine, swiftly moved into defensive formation. Every action unfolded in utter silence, locating, tracking, calculating, and preparing countermeasures. The escalation didn't come from an official order, but from each sonar ping, each turn of the propellers. The battle had begun, and neither side had a way back. At 2:13 a.m. inside the control room of the USS Tennessee, a 3D sonar map came through. A small object about 3 meters long was circling the hull, as if probing the armor of the nuclear Leviathan. At first, the crew thought it was just a lost civilian drone, but on its third pass, it suddenly stopped, then vanished from the radar. 6 minutes later, the sea above shuddered. A massive pressure blast erupted less than 120 meters from the hull. The shock cut all power for 3 seconds, long enough to plunge every screen into darkness. Outside the hull, a faint crack appeared near the bow. Not enough to breach the pressure vessel, but enough to force the entire pressure control system into emergency mode. No one in the control room said a word. In that moment of silence, everyone understood this was no accident. A real war was underway, and the USS Tennessee had just become the first target. At the same time, aboard the escort submarine USS New Mexico, the radar officer reported a returning signal 9 nautical miles away. The sound, a distinct jet-like signature, matched that of a Yasen-class submarine, a stealth weapon purpose built to hunt down big prey like the Tennessee. At 7:06 a.m. AP8, Poseidon reconnaissance aircraft took off on an emergency mission from the Royal Air Force Base at Lossiemouth. On board was the most advanced surveillance suite available, sonar buoys, a multi-layer acoustic positioning system, and a magnetic anomaly detector, MAD, capable of picking up even the slightest changes in the underwater magnetic field. The Poseidon's mission was critical, to track the trail of the mysterious attack that had put one of America's most vital strategic assets in jeopardy. Within just 2 hours, the radar operator reported 3 residual heat signatures on the ocean's surface. The first came from the wreckage of a destroyed UUV, likely a Russian reconnaissance drone. The second was a thin oil slick at the exact location of the explosion near the USS Tennessee. And the third, the most suspicious, was drifting slowly toward the northeast, heading into international waters between Norway and Russia. Three signals, 3 perfect pieces of the puzzle. The unavoidable conclusion, this was no random incident. It was a deliberate attack on a U.S. nuclear-armed submarine. The U.S. Navy Command immediately ordered the security alert level raised to DEFCON 2 across the entire North Atlantic, for the first time since the post-Cold War era. The U.S. Sixth Fleet was ordered to maneuver and redeploy its formation. Within hours, civilian air traffic around the Norwegian Sea was completely shut down for 72 hours. On the surface, the waters remained calm, but beneath them, war had already begun in silence. At the Pentagon, a classified 17-page report was placed in front of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. On the cover, a bold red stamped line read, USS Tennessee, sabotage suspected, confirmed. Inside were all the pieces of evidence, images, heat signatures, sonar data, and details of explosive materials recovered. There was no longer any doubt. Someone had deliberately struck at the nuclear heart of the United States. At the same time, thousands of kilometers from Washington, beneath the icy waters of the Norwegian Sea, 2 massive silhouettes, the USS Tennessee and the USS New Mexico, were quietly increasing their operating depth by another 50 meters. A calculated decision. No one wanted to become an easy target for a second strike. But at 1:42 p.m., the silent game was shattered. Sonar picked up a strange sound, the distinctive churn of a pump jet turbine, powerful, deep, and closing in. Not a drone, not a torpedo. This was a manned predator. And this time, there was no doubt, the Tennessee was being hunted by the very weapon designed to destroy it, Russia's Yasin-class nuclear attack submarine. On the command deck of the USS New Mexico, Captain Thomas Vargas didn't wait for orders from the Pentagon. With a single nod, he gave the signal. The hunt was about to be reversed. The moment the enemy's signal appeared, Captain Vargas ordered the deployment of an AN SLQ-25 Nixie acoustic decoy to divert any incoming torpedoes. At the same time, the New Mexico dove below 500 meters, slipping into a sonar blind spot, an area of weak acoustic reflection perfect for evading detection. The submarine shifted into full combat readiness. Less than a minute later, a deep rumble echoed from the seafloor. The torpedo had self-destructed, losing its target lock. The enemy's first strike had failed. The New Mexico immediately countered with two Mk-48s, one skimming along the seafloor, the other looping in from the flank. The hunt was on. Radar signals indicated the target was most likely the K-561 Kazan, Russia's most advanced Yasin M-class attack submarine, 130 meters long and armed with heavyweight torpedoes and Kalibar missiles. At 2:50 p.m., a UUV was deployed to scan the site of the morning explosion. 30 minutes later, it detected a shattered piece of metal and an oil trace bearing the chemical signature of emulsified explosives, clear evidence that the Tennessee had been attacked with a limpet mine. The war was no longer a matter of speculation. It was now a reality. The small crack in the USS Tennessee's hull had been temporarily reinforced with a layer of sound-dampening rubber to prevent any extra noise that could be detected. The Trident II-D5 missile system, carrying the destructive power of an entire continent, was secured under absolute lock. No one in the control room wanted to push the situation beyond control. Yet one question lingered silently in every officer's mind. Was this only the beginning? At 4:12 p.m., the answer seemed to come sooner than expected. A resonant sound, clearer and more powerful than before, tore through the still waters. A torpedo was racing in at over 60 knots on a direct course for the Tennessee. The sonar operator shouted, "Bearing 119 degree, range 700 meters, closing fast." The control room shuddered. Captain Will Harper reacted instantly, ordering the deployment of a second Nixie decoy, this time fitted with more powerful jamming sensors. At exactly 4:14 p.m., a violent turbulence surged up behind the stern. The torpedo had self-destructed, successfully deceived, but it detonated close enough to leave the entire control room holding its breath in fear. Without missing a beat, the USS New Mexico struck back. A third Mk-48 torpedo was launched, this time set to predator killer mode, autonomously tracking, locking onto its target by acoustic signature, and requiring no further guidance. For the next 15 minutes, all U.S. sonar went silent. No signals, no returns, only a pitch-black void beneath the ocean's surface. At 6:02 p.m., the P-8 Poseidon reconnaissance aircraft from RAF Lossiemouth entered the area's airspace. From an altitude of 6,000 meters, it dropped a series of sonar buoys into the suspected waters. Almost immediately, command station reports indicated a brief signal, just 3.7 seconds, detected about 4 nautical miles east of the USS New Mexico. It was the telltale signature of a Yasin-class submarine surfacing to vent emergency gases, an action that only occurs when the vessel has sustained severe damage. At that exact moment, all 3 U.S. naval assets beneath the sea simultaneously locked onto the newly detected coordinates. In the cold darkness, the predator had been exposed, and now it was about to become the prey. At 6:45 p.m., inside the Pentagon's Tactical Command Center, the signal from Atlantic Command was elevated to Alert Level 3. A senior officer stared at the screen and said firmly, "Retaliation authorized. Our submarine has been attacked, and we have proof of sabotage." (7:03 p.m., August 5, 2025). As the Nordic sun dipped below the horizon, the U.S. nuclear submarine had reversed its role. It was no longer evading, it was hunting. In less than 10 minutes, sonar picked up a clear signal, a large metallic object drifting slowly with the current, but still holding a northeast course, toward the Gajvo base in Russia. It was retreating, unaware of what was about to happen. Depth charges detonated one after another, exploding 35 meters off the Russian sub's bow. Not a direct hit, but enough to drop pressure in the forward section. The second struck the port side, just aft of the main propeller. The deep rolling blast lasted more than 6 seconds, shaking the entire acoustic layer of the surrounding waters. 7:48 p.m. The Kazan signal vanished from sonar. 10 minutes later, a distress call sounded over the international frequency. A U.S. Remus 600 UAV transmitted to the P-8 Poseidon a 3D map showing scorch marks on the Tennessee's hull, along with the remnants of a strange device containing C4 mixed with magnetic additives, a distinctive hallmark of Russian sensor UAV technology. Before midnight, the United Nations convened an emergency session. NATO activated an alert for the GI-UK gap. Northern European airspace was temporarily closed. Norway and the UK deployed destroyers to secure their exclusive zones. The Norwegian Sea became a complete no-go zone for 72 hours. As the sun slowly set over the Arctic, the ice kept melting. The sea remained bitterly cold. And deep beneath the ocean, where sunlight never reaches, the massive steel leviathans continued to move in silence. It was all over.